Well, what was the founding story? Why did you go into business for yourself? What was that moment when you were like, all right, now we're just going to do it, and here we go?
I had a change of heart for the company that I was at previously. It's kind of strange to say I've been at this 25 years and I've had two jobs since. Um, there's not many people that can say that they've worked two places in 25 years. I had just like say a change of heart of what I wanted to see. I had a young family, was ready to take the next step, and at the time, I didn't really see that I was going to go anywhere at that business.
What's been the biggest impact in finding like good people to work for your business?
It hasn't been without its hiccups. The crew I've got right now is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Rob, my lead tech right now, I hired him off of Instagram. And one of the things that I took away from Rob and the beauty of meeting people on Instagram is you get to see what they're proud of.
All right, welcome to the Superpro podcast, the heartbeat of home service excellence. I'm Roland Ligtenberg, your host, co-founder of Housecall Pro, and I'm an advocate for all the hardworking pros out there helping make our homes better, safer, and more comfortable. Through Housecall Pro, I have the privilege of supporting hundreds of thousands of pros just like you, empowering you all to achieve more, stress less, and redefine success in our industry. I'm super excited because today we have Andy Mickelson, a man who's not just an owner of a plumbing and mechanical company, Mickelson Plumbing and Heating in Missoula, but also co-hosting a powerhouse podcast with over 300 episodes. He's a 25-year member of UA Local 459, and he's spent nearly 14 years growing Mickelson Plumbing and Heating into a leader in high-efficiency systems in his area. With a team of 5 with 5 vans on the road, a goal of $2.5 million in 2024, Andy isn't just a businessman. He's passionate about the industry, field of innovation, and using his work to fund his family's worldly travels. Talk a little bit about that. We're diving into his story, his challenges, and his journey for constant improvement. Thank you for joining us on the show today, Andy.
Thanks for
so what,
me.
like
Awesome.
14 years, like, what was the founding story? Why did you go into business for yourself? What was that moment when you were like, all right, now we're just going to do it, and here we go?
Yeah. I would say, I mean, I don't know if it was even a falling out. I had a change of heart for the company that I was at previously. Still a tremendous amount of respect. Those are some of the owners there at that shop are still good, close friends of mine now. Kind of gave me that, I guess that start out of high school, right? I mean, that's kind of where that started. So I got a lot of passion for that. It's kind of strange to say I've been at this 25 years and I've had two jobs since. There's not many people that can say that they've worked two places in 25 years. So it's, I had a change of heart of what I wanted to see. I had a young family, was ready to take the next step. And at the time, I didn't really see that I was going to go anywhere at that business. I was pretty much where I was at. And I couldn't see past myself moving up there. And so I figured, well, if that's where we're at, the future's mine. So
you did it. You got in the business. You had the technical skills, but building a business requires a lot of different skills and many different hats. What was something that getting into business you hadn't really expected or thought about that you're like, oh man, if I would have just like trained up on that a little more and known that, it would have ended up a little differently?
I've always said that I wish that I would have taken a night class or some sort of business class. I took economics in college, a couple of, basics, things like that, macroeconomics. I didn't take anything that was really business directed. Like how do you run a small business? How do you start a small business? How do you get funding? How do you, whatever, how do you pay taxes? I mean, all of those kinds of things that you as an entrepreneur, you learn as you go. And sometimes that's not a very gentle learning curve. And so we made some mistakes along the way. Had a lot of help from some pretty creative CPAs and accountants to help dig us out of some weird places. And ultimately just a lot of good advice from people around us. That's probably, I guess the biggest thing is knowing that, hey, I don't know how this works. and being able to ask that question,
Yeah, I think
ask the questions.
being humble enough to know that is sometimes hard because as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to be a little headstrong.
Yep.
But the reality is like what you're doing isn't
Oh yeah.
new. It isn't rocket science, and other people have gone through it. And there's a whole slew of people out there that can
Right.
help you with your business. And I feel like as a young business owner, sometimes you maybe feel like a little isolated or on your own little island, and you don't know who to
Yep.
ask for help. Because you got to be strong.
Yep.
You're the CEO, you're the owner, and you should know all the answers to all the questions. But I think, looking back at it and
Right.
also just being older in general, you're like, oh man, young whippersnapper self myself, like what, like I should have just reached out for some more help or reached out to someone that's done it or joined like a local community.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of like mentors or communities or things that you're a part of that have kind of like helped you along the way and introduce you to other folks that have given you helpful advice?
Yeah, I got have been always been involved in trade councils and anywhere where you had a group of like-minded people has been something that I've kind of been involved in. There's a company that we buy parts from, Taco Pumps, based out of the East Coast, and they have a trade council. I got involved in that trade council early on as, I don't know, probably year one, year two in business. And I walked into one of my very first meetings with those guys, and there's like 10 contractors from around the world or around the country and a handful of engineers from Taco. And we were meeting in this hotel room, and I walk in first day, and I'm, kind of young buck, cocky, I know how this all works. And I walk in and I'm here. I am, one man shop, kind of strutting one leg at a time into the room, I guess. And in the room is a couple of contractors that are across the board, right? There's another gentleman that's got like 6 or 7 trucks on the road. We're going around the room talking about things. One guy's part of a huge franchise on the East Coast. The other guy's got a massive plumbing and heating shop in Salt Lake that's like 700 trucks, like just like massive. They're plumbing,
Everything.
electrical,
Yeah.
Get into construction and everything. And I'm just like, I just need to shut up. It's time to listen and not time to talk here. And I got a ton of information that I use today in a lot of those cases, where it's just like, hey, okay, these are things that I need to be thinking about because that's been, proven success for these other companies. And just being able to, I think, really sit back and listen to older wisdom and other success and go, yeah, okay, maybe I am doing it wrong.
Yeah. I think when it comes to like humility and, I feel like true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And it's just like being able to step aside and be like, okay, that's all right. But yeah, look, I think as entrepreneurs, it's hard because you feel like you got to know all the answers, but there's other folks out there that know things and have done things. And, humans have been around for quite some time, fairly clever, and you're bound to run into people. But I think the golden nugget here just to take away is you got to put yourself in a position to meet folks like this. So get in the room of these kind of organizations. And sometimes, you can't go into it like, well, what am I going to get out of it by joining this organization? You go in open-minded, maybe I can learn something. I think you'll go probably a little bit farther, but you got to figure out a way to join these places.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. You gotta really be looking for those opportunities. And like you said, I mean, the big thing has got to be too, is it's not necessarily what like financially you're going to take out of it, but what are you going to take out of it that might just change the whole model of what you're doing? I mean, I've talked to a handful of people that have said, oh, I was doing this and I just decided we were doing a career change. We're just changing everything. And you go, well, how did you decide that you went from being an attorney to you're now an electrician?
Sure.
What was that transition? Like something's changed here, and it's interesting to see those, hear those kind of stories.
What do you think, as you've been building your business last 14 years, what's been the biggest impact in finding like good people to work for your business? Because I feel like that's the next set of struggles that after you get into business, you got to figure out how to replicate yourself. Like walk me through how you did it and what you look for and what your process looks like.
So, I mean, that's not been, hasn't been without its hiccups. The crew I've got right now is absolutely phenomenal. I've got 3 guys that are just absolutely out killers in the install field and doing service work. And so they do a really good job of keeping us on our toes on the backside, trying to make sure they got work to do. So I've had success. I mean, Rob, my lead tech right now, I hired him off Instagram.
Nice.
And that was kind of a crazy thing. He was working on the east side of Montana. We're on the west side, and we were chit-chatting on Instagram, and I said something along the lines of, hey, if you're ever looking for a job, kind of jokingly, and he actually wrote me a letter and said, hey, if you're serious, I'm serious. I'll relocate. And I was like, let's do it. Let's go. And one of the things that I took away from Rob and the beauty of meeting people on Instagram is you get to see what they're proud of, right? And if they're active at posting things, and that's what he was. I mean, he was constantly posting about the work that he was doing, and this is the new skill I learned. And he had just finished his journeyman's test. And it was interesting to see that. And when he came over here, it's exactly who he is. He's just proud to do good quality, clean work. And one of the things I think that it's appealing working for me is that we're constantly changing the game. We don't have a routine, if you will. If we're doing a boiler install, it wouldn't be uncommon for us to change something about that install every second or third install. How do we make this better? How do we, implement a new product? And we're constantly evolving that. So I think it's new and exciting.
Yeah, I mean, look, you bring up a really great point, another golden nugget, which is like, when you bring on employees at a certain point, like your previous job, you kind of feel stalled out and you're like, all right, I've been doing the same thing for however long and I can't change. And this is the company processes. What is it that I do? But I feel like, from there, you somehow, even in your own company now, you're just like, okay, well, we're going to, every 4th install, try something new. How can we do better? What else can we change? Just because we've been doing it this way for the last however many years or the last 4 installs, what else can we do? But also there's, constantly evolving technology around us all. And so there's new stuff. And so new stuff comes out, try it, use it. Maybe it works for you, maybe it doesn't. But that keeps it young and fresh to hire this kind of talented people. It's interesting you found them on Instagram, but it makes total sense. People that are posting about the work that they do, their clean installs, and are proud of their work and proud to show it and don't mind doing it publicly, which is like a whole nother story. And I can only imagine for plumbing, because I've seen some of those plumbing groups on Facebook, and that's like a roast in itself. But yeah, that's a really cool story.
So and the other 2 guys I've got actually had hired out of they were working at another company here, and I've been looking for plumbers for years. And I finally said, okay, fine. You know what? I don't have an abundance of available plumbers here. And the only way that I'm going to find those plumbers is I'm going to have to find somebody else that I can train to be a plumber. And so what I ended up doing is I found a couple of HVAC techs that were on an install crew that were just tired of doing install, right? They're in the grind day in and day out. And I met one of the guys, and he and I were talking. I said, well, we do service work. Are you any good at service? Well, I'm willing to learn. Done. Let's go. And that has been a learning challenge for both of us, because he's been thrown into a completely different world that I think he likes, maybe still a little bit on the fence there, but he's also a phenomenal installer, and he's got a really good head on him about, working through problems and things like that. So I've got 2 guys that have come out of the HVAC field that were a little less. The heating side of Mickelson Plumbing and Heating is more boilers, hot water heat, hydronic side. And so we definitely dabble in the HVAC now, because I have 2 installers that are pretty good at it. Right. So it's like, well, why not open that door? And at the same time, I was able to enroll both of those guys in the plumbers and pipe fitters local here, and they got future service credits for their HVAC experience. So now one of them just turned out got his journey, or is getting his journeyman's license now, and the other one's a
Oh, that's
couple years
awesome.
away
You
from
know,
that.
I feel like sometimes it's, I hear pros say like, oh, you know, you either have a replacement mindset or you're like a service mindset, because one is like, you were like a puzzle
Yeah.
solver and you love like knocking your head on a wall a million times to get the thing to work. And the other one's like, no, I want to start with a blank something and just
Yep.
build a Picasso and make it look super pretty because
Yep.
like there ain't nothing there to go fix. So I can start from a blank slate. Do you like I hear that it's hard to change someone's mindset to be able to make the swap, especially from this replacement mindset to this kind of service and troubleshooting mindset. But like how are you able to do that? Because I
Yeah.
hear that a lot of people struggle with that entirely or don't even try at this point.
Well, and so that's a good point, because it's easy for an installer to go in and say, well, this
Right.
is where I'm putting the equipment. I don't care about anything else, right? I'm going to put this in, and then what happens down the road is not me. And to turn the installer into a service guy and say, look at how this otherwise nice install is a real piece of junk to work on. Right. Like, because we, there's this piece of framing in front of it, or you didn't put any valves in, or you can't get to the front of the unit because it's on the wrong side of the attic. I mean, just some of those little things. And that's a big challenge. We've taken some equipment out, and we've moved some equipment because we
Yeah.
weren't thinking service. I'm looking at it as, I'm a service contractor. I'm in this house to start with because the customer needed service, not generally because they needed a new piece of equipment. And we've gone in, we've found whatever reason that they need to have a new piece of equipment. We've sold them new piece of equipment. I want to work on that for the entire life of that piece of equipment. I want to be back there 20 times, right? I expect 20 annual services out of this piece of equipment. And so if we go in and do a good job, we can go in and do our annual service quicker and get in and out at more profitable. And the homeowner's happy because we're in their house less often. They're happy because the system works good. It's easy to maintain. It's cost effective to maintain. And so being able to take a few things and say, okay, how can we make this easier when we come back in the fall next year? And that's been a big eye opener for my install guys to go, yeah, well, if we put the filter in the grill and the ceiling instead of in the attic, now we can change it. 3 minutes, we can change a filter and we're in and out.
Do you feel
So,
like that's a very mature mindset of you, because it's very much like I in the back of my head, I hear like Simon Sinek, like the infinite game, and like you're not just looking at something and it's like like this is just a job and who cares what happens afterwards. Right. How do you get there? Because as a new business owner, sometimes you're like, I don't even know if I'm seeing this customer again. And, you're just like kind of just banging off jobs and trying to be as profitable as you can and kind of move. And you're like, when you say this piece of equipment I'm installing, I'm going to be there for 20 years or whatever, 20 tune-ups, 20 seasons, whatever the life of this thing is. That's that's a big jump, because you're trading some time dollars in the beginning because you're doing things right.
Yes.
Where normally a contractor might, I don't know, they'll just punch through a whole bunch of framing when they shouldn't have, or done something, cut corners, right? To do the thing faster. How did you get that mindset shift? Because I think that's a big part of how you end up where you are now, which is, everything isn't just a one-off thing.
Right. I think a lot of that comes from spending, like I say, the better part of 25 years in service and seeing these pitfalls, going in and having to tell a customer that your 3-year-old boiler is on its last legs, or your 3-year-old furnace is so oversized and poorly installed that, hey, we got to replace it. That's a terrible conversation to have. Even though I'm at a point where I'm standing to make a profit from this customer, that doesn't sit well with me. And so I've always taken and tried to put myself a little bit in the customer's shoes and said, what kind of value am I providing with this system? Number one thing, we got to be comfortable, right? Primary, let's say, in the heating and air conditioning market, we're here to provide comfort. That's the number one goal. Number two is, how do we provide that comfort and make the customer feel like we just got the best possible thing we could spend our money on? In a lot of cases, we're running up on $20,000, right? there's not a lot of homeowners out there these days that are like, hey, I got 20 grand
right.
burning a hole in my pocket.
Yep.
Right?
Real money.
That's a
real
big
money.
sum of money.
And that's usually not in their checking account. They got to move some money around, you know, like that's not easy.
Yeah. Yep. And so I really try to look at that and say, okay, well, how do I apply the maximum amount of value for that? And one of the places is the system should be infinitely efficient, right? How do I make that thing so efficient and so easy and cost effective to run that they're going to go to the neighbors at the picnic and say, hey,
that's a great point.
Man, we had this system installed and it is absolutely bomber. We don't hear it running at night. The kids are comfortable. You know, it's not dry in the house. You know, it just all of those things that a homeowner, I guess from a layperson, understands as value. Right. And if you can capitalize on those so that customer is like, we won here. I paid a premium for it, but I've gotten a value and I'm really happy to call these people back. And I'm even happier to send them to my mother-in-law's house or the neighbor's house or the babysitter's house or whatever.
That's a great lens. And I just totally echo what you're saying, which is like, you know, not only is this customer one, like this install in this unit, you want to be there for life, but it's like, what is the impact that they can have on other people around them? And that's how you build that referral, that inbound, that organic, you know, people being like, I heard about you, I saw about you, someone raved about you.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you got to invest those couple extra hours to do it right, you know, to do it in the ceiling and not just stuff it up in the attic where no one can see your chop job, you know? And so you got to make it look nice. You got to clean up the drywall. You got to, you know, do all the things right.
Right.
That's great.
I mean, it's, that kind of mindset is, I mean, it's got us to where we're at right now. Our advertising budget, like our actual spend is, I don't know, we're $2,000 a year. It's stupid nothing. Like, I mean, and it's like, oh, hey, we're going to sponsor the wrestling team, you know, so we got a little something on the flyer or we got something. It's all little local things. And we've just basically done away with everything else because we've just said, hey, we're just going to focus on referral. Right. We're looking at Google reviews. I mean, Housecall has been absolutely bomber for that for us. When we started, this is funny because 14 years in, we've been with Housecall since March of 22.
Couple years. Yeah. A little more than a couple years. Yeah.
Couple years. We had 7 Google reviews after 12 years. Right. We're at like 400 right now. Yeah. And it's just like, that's awesome. You know, and so I look at what we're doing with my local competition, right? Without spending any Google lead money and without doing any of that, we're hitting pretty solid on the list and it's all organic. And we've got a lot of people I've had a couple other companies around town that are like, where are you coming up with these reviews? They're all legit, solid reviews. And I'm like, yep. They're all 4, 5-star ideally. Yeah. And, you know, if I'm getting a 4, I'm calling the customer. Hey,
how could I have earned a 5?
Where did we miss? Right. You know, where did we miss? I need to correct that. I don't necessarily need you to correct your review. I'd love you if you would, but where did we miss? Clearly you felt like we didn't give you a 5.
Yeah. Wow. I think anything that's non-5-star usually gives a lot of pros. Just, you know, they're like, oh no, what do we do? How can I remove it? You know, but just like being open and honest, like, look, I didn't earn it. What can I do to earn that 5-star? But I like what you said after that, which was like, look, maybe you change your route, maybe you don't. I just want to make it right. By default, you know that customer, if you do right by them, they're gonna be like, no, this guy Andy and his crew totally deserve that 5-star, right? And that flips it. I love that strategy. And I also think what a lot of people don't realize is, you know, how you build those reviews, they compound. You know, it's like, man, I wish I would have started putting money away in my IRA when I was 18. You know what I mean? Like a max contribution every year because, you know, I would have been like tens of millions of dollars at 65. But, you know, it's one of those things where the sooner you start those reviews, they compound and it like a competitor can never catch up. Like it's just not possible. Right. And so, you know, you just cement yourself like in an immovable object, you know, in that area. And I feel like the sooner you get started, the better. But if you don't ask, you're not going to get. And I feel like probably prior to Housecall Pro,
Right.
you just, you weren't being direct about the ask.
I never asked.
And so, it's hard. And sometimes even uncomfortable, I
Yep.
feel like, for pros when they're like, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm being spammy asking for reviews, but you just have the software do it for you, and it's not like super confrontational or anything like that.
It's so crazy because I when I started the business, I don't even know if Google Business was even a thing at that point. It would have been in its infancy, likely, where you were starting to get reviews and whatnot. And I set up the business account. And when I was starting the business, I decided, well, I don't have the funds to go hire a professional website to be built. So I, for over a course of a couple of evenings and a week, I taught myself how to build a Wix website, right? And this is cheap, whatever. And it gets the job done. And it was super crude. And it probably paid for itself a couple of times, but pretty quick it was obsolete when they went to HTML5, and my Wix site didn't work for a number of years. And that kind of, when I got that all up and running, the guy that built the website that I have now says, do you even use your Google Business account? Because like, that's how people find you, right? Like if they're searching, that's it. And I was like, I mean, it's got a picture of
a logo somewhere.
And, I'm like, oh, cool. I got 4 reviews, And so it was, that's 5 years in, whatever.
Oh my gosh.
That it was like, okay, wow. Not a
like
good
one of those
performance.
times you're like, man, if I could tell baby Andy, 14 years ago, this is what you would do.
Yeah.
As you're thinking about just, I'm curious because, you've got your business, you're part of local organizations, you've got your podcast, the Make Trades Great Again. You're 300 episodes plus in. Yep. What drives you to do this kind of stuff? Because that's like a fun project and you're kind of building that, but why?
Oh yeah. I think that the majority of it is it's like this local networking thing that you were talking about, right? So Eric, for anybody that doesn't know him, Eric Ani is kind of our, we have a partnership in this Make Trades Great Again. It's a part of his bigger media company. And what we've ended up deciding over the years is we just enjoy talking to each other. And both of us are pretty good at talking. And being able to go on a couple times a week, sometimes right now we're doing once a week. We upload a new episode, and a lot of it's just us chit chatting back and forth. He has a small plumbing and heating shop in Minneapolis area, and we have so many common things that we deal with day in and day out. And ironically, both of us were looking for new software March of 2022. He was using, I don't remember what he was using, Thrive or something, another. I had a different invoicing software that was not working. And we looked at, 5 or 6 different software platforms at AHR in 2022. And when we left there, we ended up, the last booth we visited was the Housecall Pro booth. And we both signed up within a week of each other, probably 2 weeks after the show.
Interesting. And so now, like, you both can spitball back and forth about it. And I feel like because you're running similar businesses too, you're probably running similar workflows or similar workarounds or similar just methods for doing stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. If we looked at each other's accounts, we both have estimates to each other. Right. And so a lot of times, and because we're in the same marketplace or in the same industry, different marketplaces, I'll work up a workup, here's this boiler proposal, and I'll work it up and, hey, I think I like this. I'm changing it up before I send it to a customer. I'll just email it to him blindly. Boom. Like, hey, and then he'll call me back the next morning or whatever and be like, hey, so I read through this. I like this. I like that. This is goofy. What if you do this? And then now we're both running a very similar proposal, right? Well, why wouldn't we? And that's kind of the beauty of it. And you see it every now and then on the Facebook group, hey, can somebody send me your price book? Things like that. And you see it bouncing around out there a little bit. I'm a little reluctant to do that on the basis that my price book is, I feel like it's like my dirty laundry. I imported like 4,800 items from QuickBooks when we started, and they're in there, and, I use a bunch of them, but if somewhere else would be to look at it, they'd be like, this guy's a train wreck, man. This thing is ugly. but it's all data entry, at this point. If I can search for it and find it,
yeah.
It's
And
there.
I think too,
So
when it comes to price books, a lot of pros are like, do I have to have all that? And, the reality is like, there's an 80-20 rule to everything, and like, I bet you of that price book,
yeah,
there's probably a couple hundred that you use with like regular frequency. And then you've got the long tail of stuff that you use every
yep,
once in a while when you show up at like the 1960s house that's never been remodeled or, like all kinds
yep,
of craziness. But, when you're starting to build out your price book, you
yep.
don't have to start out with 4,800 guys. Like you can start out with way, way less. You can
No,
start with zero and just add to your price book as you go. But
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
don't feel too like this is a big massive thing you have to do before you get started.
Yeah. No, definitely not. Build it as you go. Add the things that you need for sure. I started it on the basis that in QuickBooks, everything was, you could run like a short code, like an item name, right? And very similar to the item or the description in Housecall. And I went in and I had a local vendor that helped because they used some short codes for all of the plumbing fittings. So I went through and just replicated that. Right. So, brass 90s were a BR611. If it was half inch, it would be a BR611D. Well, if I put that in, the description that I had pre-populated was 1/2 inch brass lead free T, domestic, whatever. So now I used 5 characters to create 35 characters. I didn't have to type that every time I used a 1/2 inch brass T. Right. And the same thing goes for PEX tees or copper tees or press tees or all of those fittings. And so by having those things in your price book, your technicians don't spend as much time creating invoices, right? And if we're going to get paid on the job and we're doing things on a flat rate basis, the less time they spend invoicing, the more time the quicker it is they're on to the next job, or the quicker it is they're getting paid. And that's part of that efficiency thing. I don't know where I got hung up on that. And it's been one of those things that I've kind of been hung on for a long time, is look at every single process that you do. As soon as you figure out or feel like your process is absolutely perfect, change it, right? You're going to find some way that you can make this faster. You can make this less keystrokes. You can make this, quicker to get paid, whatever that is. And that's where I guess, Housecall's been monstrous for that, in our business because it implemented all those things that my previous software was missing. The proposal stuff, the having pipeline. That's when I first found out pipeline. I don't know if it was Shayna.
Let me
gosh.
So let's reverse here. So Housecall Pro, field service management software. Pipeline is like an add-on which you have to buy in addition to the thing. But like, what made you try it out, think about it, and then once you figured it out, what was your experience?
Well, so everybody's familiar with that uses Housecall is familiar with this unscheduled jobs thing, right? You look at the schedule, and on the left there's this little icon of chaos, is what I kind of call it, that might have 10, 12, 15 100. Things. Sometimes it's when we're busy, it's 40, 50, 100. When that thing gets to like 40, Cheryl's like, okay, pump the brakes. What's going on? Why are we not finishing jobs? And then a lot of times we get in there and we find out that, we use segments. That's kind of where our techs are comfortable. We use a lot of segments. And so anybody that's not familiar, if I schedule a job and let's say I send Rob out to do that job and he's done with what he was there for today, and the homeowner is like, hey, we want you to change the water heater. He'll create a segment for that, right? I need to change the water heater. Here's a list of parts that I need. I need 3 hours. Now that's Cheryl's queue, who Cheryl, she isn't here, is my wife and my better half as far as being a business partner. She's my organization, right? So she runs the schedule. She's our dispatcher. And that's her realm of how do I make 46 jobs turn into no jobs, right? Like clear that out. That's her daily goal is get all those gone. Exactly. So my problem is that I am the one that is doing all the estimates. So I'm going out looking at jobs. I'm doing the estimates. I'm starting an estimate. I didn't have any good way to find what I was missing, right? So I could go into jobs and into my workflows and find this estimates tab, right? And it was there, it was like, okay, here's all the estimates. And I think they changed colors, or I don't even remember how that worked. It's been long enough. come to find out pipeline exists. And I'm like, you know what, whatever, let's just try it. It's whatever, $80 or $75. I don't even know what it is. It doesn't even matter at this point. It's minuscule in comparison to how it's changed my life of being able to go in, open up pipeline, click the estimates tab, and I can see how many that I have unscheduled. That box should always be 0, right? Every one of my estimates, if I've got an opportunity to look at something, that better be on the schedule.
Unearned money that's like possible to be earned. It's like a little treasure chest there.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah. It's like a scratch ticket.
Like what's in here? What's under
you just got to move it over.
Yeah.
Right. So then the scheduled file, I don't worry about the scheduled, right? That's stuff that's coming up. Then the next one is in progress. In progress is usually jobs that I can't bid while I'm on site. And in a lot of cases, people, I see people and I'm envious of the companies that have a salesman or a technician that can walk in and go, here's what you got, Mrs. Smith. This is how much it's going to cost. And I overthink things. And so that's a downfall of mine is I'll look at something and I'll be, let me think about this. It's my arch nemesis. Because you know what? Let me think about this is let me go waste a whole bunch of time thinking about a job that's actually pretty simple. And we've probably done like 40 times. Right.
And that's the reality. And look, like it could also be, a lot of homeowners, they have a checklist of things they want to get done. And one of the things on the checklist is like get an estimate for a thing. Doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, and then I got to schedule them to come out and do the work. Yeah. But it's a thing they need to do. And, and you probably haven't gone to, but, once it's in your pipeline, you might forget about it as a human, but the software doesn't forget and it knows it's in that state and it's going to keep trying to nudge that puppy over. Yep.
And so that part of it has been, like I say, whatever the price dollar amount of that is for me and the amount of work that we've closed because I've stayed on top of it. Versus before, when I didn't have it, I was less organized and it used to drive Cheryl absolutely nuts because she'd get a call from the customer, 3 weeks after. Hey, I was just following up on the estimate. And I'm like, oh, shoot, that sucks. That doesn't look very good. What is the saying? Show me you don't care about my job without telling me.
Like forget it to even give an estimate. That's right.
Right. Exactly. So the pipeline definitely has increased that closing rate for us because I'm being more diligent about, let's get in and get out. That said, I went for the last, 18 months ago, got to this point where I had 10, 15 jobs in progress in the pipeline. And it was driving me nuts because I didn't feel like I could get through them. And it wasn't until I said, we were busy, super busy. So I was working out in the field, maybe get an office day once a week, and otherwise it's, nights and weekends, evenings. And I finally looked at it and said, well, how does this work? Like, why am I going through and recreating a wheel every single boiler job? Right. And so I went back through, I've got 4,800 items, right? That's all done. I went through, started creating some flat rate services. So now I have let's say my 85,000 BTU boiler. It includes now all of the materials and the labor to install the boiler, none of the other piping. So it's whatever it's like, I guess I want to call it.
It's like that's your base. And then you've got estimate. Like the majority of the things that are always the same across all of the jobs. So it's your like lowest common denominator. And then you're adding the things that are like, I don't know, like I need 20 yards of this, 10 yards of that, because it's like in the basement or something.
Right. Yeah. I the way I've explained it is it's like building a hamburger, right? So you go to a restaurant and you order a hamburger. What are you going to get? You're going to get just the burger, right? And maybe it's the burger and the bun and the napkin that it comes in, whatever it took to make that, put that burger ready to eat. And then you add, all the condiments to it. And then you add a small order of fries. Maybe the fries is the indirect water heater, but you start building this thing out. And it was interesting. I was on the office hours with Chris just last week. I don't remember if it was Kyle.
Ricky Artie, maybe.
Ricciardo, he was on there, and he kind of spurred a concept or a thought that I thought, that's interesting. Maybe I'll try that. And so my templates now have what do you call it? A deluxe burger, if you will, right? So it's all of the things. And he goes, it's so much easier to go into the field and delete the things you don't want. And I was like, holy crap, that's cool. That's a different idea. I hadn't thought of it that way. Instead of going in and searching and adding them, because that takes time. Now you can just go in and swipe them off, and
it's way easier. It's funny you bring that up, because I feel like, when you're in the Housecall Pro community too, there's other pros that are doing stuff, and they're probably figured out some other clever way. And you're totally right. It's way easier to click like XXX than to go like, now add a 1/4 inch this, now add angle stop, search for that, and boom. Yep. Each time you're doing that, like when you're talking about efficiencies, you're not just thinking like the SKUs. Sure, you have those, and it makes it a little easier to find, but like you're still having to do that every single job versus like, I got that deluxe one built, and if you don't want the cheese and if you don't want the tomato, we'll just click, remove. Delete. Yep.
So, but it took me back to that point where I was talking about that I walk away from the customer's house without delivering the estimate. And this is what I've came here for, and I haven't delivered my end of it, and I've left. Why is that? What is the holdup there? And a lot of it's, I don't want to fiddle around with the software at the customer's kitchen table, building this estimate, right? And that clicked over. And so one of the things that I'm actively working on is going through and modifying my templates, so that my boiler templates now include the deluxe burger. And it's there with the milkshake and the whole every possibility that I could sell, and we'll just delete them off as needed. And I'm curious to implement that as we come into heating season a little bit closer. And
I think for those non-Housecall Pro users or Housecall Pro users that don't know what estimates or job templates are, is if there's something you do very often, you can build those up and then you can drop those in, and it includes all of the things, including job types, business units, and other fields and tags. So that way, if you're doing it over and over again, which, mind you, there's an 80-20 rule to everything. So think about what are these like lowest common denominator items you might always add. And then the second piece where there's a benefit that a lot of people maybe aren't thinking about, that's funny that the little balloons are popping up. I didn't think about that. But the second thing that's interesting is, if you're sitting with a homeowner and they're thinking about price, you can start with the best, and loss aversion is like, look, I can get to the price, if it's a function of price. You're already sold on me because I'm going to deliver it at the highest possible rate. So if you want, I can remove this, I can remove this, right? And you can get to the price that maybe the homeowner wants, rather than going the reverse, which is like, oh, and would you like this special? Do you want PEX instead of this? Do you want the upgraded version of this? And now you're coming across as very salesy, whereas like, look, I'm going to start with the best because like I want to deliver the best experience for you, the most comfort and all these things. And I'm going to show you how it works. I'll show you the price, but if for whatever reason, it doesn't match your budget or your price range or your expectations, we can work on removing some things to get it a little bit closer. But it's like, not only is it good for like the job template, the efficiency and all those things, but like it's a much better, powerful selling position, because you're really just educating the customer and letting them be in control, because you've already built all the pricing. You've already built all your markup. You don't actually care what they pick, because no matter what they pick, it's a win.
Right. I had somebody, I don't even know where it was at, years ago said on that same concept that they would never sell the great big, huge, super fancy Class C motorhome if somebody didn't try and sell it. Right. Like nobody ever walked in and was like, I'd like to spend $500,000 on a motorhome.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. Nobody said that. Everybody went in and like, hey, show me your motorhomes. Let's start at the bottom. And it's the same concept with anything we sell. Any of our pros sell, is that if you don't go in with the anticipation that we have this good, better, best policy or something, if you never present best, you're not going to sell best.
Yeah.
And best typically comes with a better margin, and and maybe more equipment and
and hopefully you've priced it in a way that allows you to spend the extra bit of time to do what you call it, which is like, look, I want to be here 20 years down the road, still servicing this unit. And so the reality is like the better piece of equipment is going to last longer, and that's going to get you in the door. And by the way, you servicing that one piece of equipment means there's still lots of other equipment that's in that homeowner's home that you can address. And 20 years from now, you might have added more to what your company can even do. And so it comes down to that lifetime value of that customer, not just the one-time job, which is, I think, what separates, the starting shops and the smaller pros from the pros that have that really long-term view.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me, just changing directions real quick here. We were talking about AI just like a little bit before, the pre-show here, and you really spiked my interest here. But walk me through like this scenario, because I feel like a lot of pros are hung up and like, I hear that I should be using it, but I don't even know where to start. Or what do I even do? Or like, what's even the value? But the thing that you told me is probably the most obvious one, but I don't think enough pros know that you can do it, and you don't need anything particularly special out of the box other than just a basic, OpenAI ChatGPT subscription.
Yeah, exactly. So I hadn't started using it until I started paying for Plus. However, the concept is not it's not any different. It's definitely fuzzier and more easy to use the Plus version if you're interested in getting a subscription. What we were talking about earlier is I've started implementing this ChatGPT in some basic business stuff, right? That's where most people are hearing about it, is this backside business, write me this proposal or help me reword this description. Those things are amazing, especially if you have technicians that, I don't even know
aren't English majors.
I don't want to say that aren't English majors. Exactly. People that don't have the best grammar, the best punctuation, or just, that's just not their thing.
Totally.
Right. You could take that technician and grab ChatGPT and say, blah, blah, blah. I changed the water heater and your dishwasher thingy was leaking, and, go through with this really crude description and probably get something that sounds pretty professional out of it. And that part of it is huge, because a lot of what the customer gets, it's a lot of people think, oh, well, it's just a receipt. Well, it's not. It's a description. In 6 months, if something happens, the customer wants to be able to go back and read a tangible or have a legible record of what they did. Not only that, but if I have to go back and look 5 years ago, what we did on March 2nd, what did we do? Right? Does it have pictures? Does it have a legible description? Is it thorough? Is it detailed? I know exactly. Oh, we were already there and replaced this 5 years ago. That's got an 8-year warranty. We're on it. We know those things. And so because we don't pay any additional to have 50 characters versus 3 or 10, right?
Go for it.
Why not? No, don't fill the box up, but put some information in there. And ChatGPT will do that largely for you. Gemini will do it. There's probably a dozen of them out on the market now. I've been using that differently only on the basis that it's like, well, what does this thing know? It's almost like starting to, quiz the trainer type thing. And the other day I was going to a local Wendy's. This Wendy's has 2 Renais for water heaters. And we had a fault code 11. So manager calls, hey, we have fault code 11 on one of those Renais. So I'm on my way across town and I'm going, okay, fault code 11, that's a flame failure. It's probably a flame rod, it's these things. And I'm like, wonder what ChatGPT thinks it is. And so I click on advanced voice mode while I'm driving. But hey, what do you know? Tell me what I need to know about a Renai code 11. I'm, headed to this job. And with advanced voice mode, you can interrupt its description.
You can interrupt at any point.
So it's like having it's just like you and I having this conversation, right? And it'll tell you, hey, do you need more information? Do you want more information? And so it throws out this description, it's like, check the fan, code 11 is a combustion failure, essentially. The unit did not light. Look at things like flame failure, look at gas pressure, look at, is your power on? Is there's some real generalized things. And then it says, in addition, you should check for the fan, you should check for blocked air intake, you should check for, a clogged up burner, maybe even a clogged up heat exchanger. And it dawned on me right then. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. The last 6 of these that I've gone on have been, dirty flame sensor. What if it wasn't? Would this application kind of lead me to believe, hey, look somewhere else, right? If I went there and I said, okay, it's bad flame sensor, and I took the flame sensor out and I put a new one in there and it didn't work, where would I go? Well, now I might walk in there and go, well, we were there, 2 months ago to do service. We should have checked the flame sensor 2 months ago. That's probably not it, and anyway, go in, check some things out, and it ended up not being anything significant, but it sparked my mind to think, well, why don't we use this more often?
That's right.
Right. And why is it that our technicians aren't using it? And so, it's something that you got to get people used to and comfortable to. And I think a lot of people are kind of, I should say a lot. There are people out there that are very nervous about AI, in the sense of, well, what if they're going to know things about me? You know what? Guess what? They already know lots of things about you. That's Chat GPT is probably not doing that. Or it's not adding anything.
Already know. Like,
your My Chart didn't already have posted online.
That's right.
So it just, I don't know. I guess I've always been one to embrace technology and, hey, let's dive into it. If it's truly terrible, it'll probably go away. Yeah. But it's been kind of fun to play with. This morning I asked it what kind of coffee I should have while I was on the way into town. What's the what was it? I don't even remember what I could look back in my transcript, but the cool thing is it records. It's also cataloging your conversation. So if you ever go back and you're going through and hey, I need to figure out a heat loss calculation for this building. This is a new one that Eric and I were playing with the other day. Is looking at a mini split install. So Roland, you're building a new podcast studio in the backyard, right? And if I were coming to your house to do an estimate, I could walk in and be like, okay, I got a 10 by 15, whatever it is, blah, blah, blah. Here's my insulation values. It's got these windows. It's got these doors. It's in this location. It's got this solar exposure. I could tell or type that information into ChatGPT and say, give me a heat loss calculation. And it legit will send you a heat loss calculation of, this is what we believe off of industry standards, and not just, oh, you're in Oregon, you should have a 25 BTU a square foot,
It's so funny because literally, and literally, I would did that. And I did that for myself. I was like, look, how many BTUs do I need? And then it ran me through, well, what's the siding? What's the insulation? How many windows are there? And I'm like, and I was just answering that in insulation, windows, location, equipment, people, and, and it spit out the amount of BTUs I roughly need. It gave me some model numbers, and I'm no pro. I'm just like a software talking head kind of a guy. But I was like, when I talked to my Housecall Pro user who's doing the HVAC, Fuse HVAC here, up in Sonoma, they're like, oh wow, okay, sure, that's what you want. Yeah, we'll take a look, but that sounds right. Who did that for you? I was like, no, it wasn't from another estimate. It was just ChatGPT.
Yeah, I was just talking to this lady on
exactly.
Online.
They're like, how did that work? Yeah, that's my voice. You can pick because you can pick out for those who don't know, you can pick out the voice and the energy and whatever of the advanced reasoning mode. But yeah, look, we're typically these are 20 to 30 minutes. We can go way over. I feel like we need to do a part 2 because there's so much to talk about. But is there any other? You've given us so many golden eyes. Is there any last piece of parting wisdom maybe you'd give to your younger self a decade ago? Something that people can noodle on here after they press stop after this podcast.
I think the biggest thing that I would say that I've picked up over the years and learned of is stop thinking that you are doing it right. Okay. Like, understand that you might not be doing it the most right, if that makes sense. Right. Always look at that process. It's kind of like I was talking, Kyle mentioned that thing, and I'm like, this is my system. I've got it dialed in. Well, you know what? I just threw the entire system out the window and revamped because that made more sense. And you have to be able to do that. As a business owner, you have to be able to shift on the fly and go, that's more efficient. That's more profitable, or whatever, or that's going to get my guys home to their families quicker, or whatever the scenario is. If it's got a positive outcome, be willing to make that change, right? It may come with some financial cost.
Yeah.
Do it, right? Like you got to look at the big picture sometimes, and sometimes it takes, spending $5,000-$10,000 to make the big picture happen.
That's really good advice. A lot of people are like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it's just like, oh, no, please don't think that way. No. Because this is a perfect example of it's not broke. But the reality is that now you're shaving off, who knows, 2 minutes, 3 minutes off every call. Well, times, 4 guys out there times 4 calls a day. So you're looking at 16 times a week. And now all of a sudden you're talking real hours. And, those real hours, don't forget, as a business owner, you're paying for those real hours, and when you're paying for them, if you can take that time away and put it towards something else, you can afford to pay your people more. If you can pay your people more, they're going to be happier. They're going to stick with you longer, and you're going to retain the best talent. And at the end of the day, the best talent is going to take care of your best customers, and that's what you got to focus on. But I love it. This has been super fun. I really appreciate you coming on, Andy, on the show. We'll definitely have to have you come back. And for those of you that are also looking potentially to listen to another podcast and hear more of Andy, go listen to him on, Make Trades Great Again. You can look it up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and probably all the platforms. I didn't really ask, but I'm just plugging your stuff.
Pretty much anywhere
you can get it. Thanks again, and stay tuned for another great guest coming your way next week on the Superpro podcast. Thanks again, Andy. Take care.
The Superpro podcast is brought to you by Housecall Pro, the leading platform for the home service industry. Housecall Pro streamlines your workflows and simplifies everything from scheduling and dispatching to communication and billing. Unlock the full potential of your home service business with Housecall Pro. Work smarter and more efficiently with streamlined workflows and detailed analytics. Win more business and serve your customers well, every single time. Join more than 40,000 home service pros who have already revolutionized their businesses. Work smarter with streamlined workflows, get organized with centralized information, and scale your business your way. Learn more at housecallpro.com.